Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, my name is Tori, and today, not to sound like a typical YouTuber, but today I am sharing my most requested video, and that is a bookshelf tour. This is the first time in the history of my channel I am filming a bookshelf tour, and quite honestly it might be the last, because this was, at least for a while, because this was a lot. It was a lot of work to film, but it was a lot of fun too. So don't get me wrong, I had a great time filming this, but I had like flashbacks from when I was moving earlier this year, and I was like, oh my god, I can't be moving all these books around like this. I'm filming this intro after I've already filmed and edited the bookshelf tour. So the tour is really long. It's about 40 minutes long, but I do want to point out that this is a traditional bookshelf tour. I like watching them, so that is what you're gonna get from me. And by traditional, I just mean like taking out each individual book and showing you each individual book on my shelves. I know some people these days, they opt for just an overview of the shelves, an overview of the bookcases. I've always loved watching people pull out each book, even though it takes a really long time. I love putting on those videos in the background and just sitting back with a snack. Even booktubers whose tastes are just wildly different from my own, I will sit there and watch like a 50-minute bookshelf tour. So those are the kinds of videos I personally like, so that's the kind of video that I filmed. The other thing I want to point out is that I'm going to be giving you a tour of these 3 cases directly behind me. I do have 2 additional cases in my room. They're nowhere near as tall as these, but those cases are more just like nostalgia books that I grew up on, some random literary fiction on those shelves, and then also like books that are kind of on their way out, books I'm thinking about unhauling. So it's just kind of a mess on those 2 shelves in my room, and I think these 3 are quite enough. The other thing I want to point out is that there is no real order to the way that my books are organized on these shelves. My collection is primarily adult science fiction and fantasy, and those, you know, the different subgenres. So that is just all mixed in together. I do keep books together, like hardcover books, paperback books together, just because I like that high consistency, but otherwise everything is just thrown in there. I do have one shelf that is a dedicated thriller shelf, and I do have like a couple of shelves that are dedicated YA shelves, at least for the most part. There's a couple of books thrown in here and there, but aside from that, it is just like one happy book family behind me. So there's that. And then the last thing I want to point out is that I have a pretty good mix of read and unread books on my shelves. If you guys have been watching me for a while, you know that I don't keep books I don't like, and I don't even keep books that I just enjoyed for the most part. I do unhaul pretty occasionally just to keep making room for new books to come in. So even though I've read a lot, I also get rid of a lot. I donate to my local bookstores, I donate to my local libraries, and just kind of keep the flow going like that. And so because of that, I've curated a collection behind me of books that I just absolutely love, and books I haven't read yet. So that's pretty much the gist of what is going on back there. So I don't want to drag this intro out any longer because the tour itself is already pretty long, but I hope you guys enjoy this. Grab a snack, put it on in the background, grab a drink, I don't know, do whatever you want to do, but I do hope you enjoy this, and I will see you after the tour. Okay guys, so this is the very top shelf. Sorry if it's a little wobbly. I'm holding my tripod extremely high right now, and I can't even tell if this video is in focus all the way up there. But aside from the Game of Thrones box set, this entire top shelf is just like a free-for-all of literary fiction, classics, contemporary. I'll just pan over very slowly. James Baldwin is up there, Malcolm X, Rebecca, Colleen Hoover, Pachinko, Tana French. I'm just really naming what I see through the viewfinder that high. Taylor Jenkins Reid, Homegoing, Becoming, Such a Fun Age, Wolf Hall, got some historical fiction, Toni Morrison. It's stacked pretty high up there. More Taylor Jenkins Reid. Road I see up there, Pretty Girls. Haruki Murakami is up there. Donna Tartt, Roxane Gay. What is that? Transcendent Kingdom. Got some Book of the Month picks up there. The Girls by Emma Klein. Between the World and Me. And a little Eiffel Tower knickknack. And that is the top shelf in a nutshell. That's about it. And then the last item I have here before we get started on the actual shelves is this poster that my coworker got for me. She got it from an Etsy shop for my birthday. It says, "I read books and I know things." That's what I do. And I immediately got a frame for this when I moved in. This is beautiful. So it just hangs right here in the corner with my lamp. And then on this lamp, I just have a lot of like book sleeves and a tripod and my Alexa. And that's it. All right, guys, so we're on shelf number 1, and I have a lot of series that I love on this top shelf. So let's get started with the first trilogy, which is the Until the End of the World trilogy by Sarah Lyons Fleming. Book 1 is Until the End of the World, Book 2 and After, and Book 3, All the Stars in the Sky. This is an amazing trilogy. I highly recommend it if you love post-apocalyptic zombie novels. Just go read these. They're so good. And it's not about the zombies, it's about the relationships between these characters. I love it. And then next is Mordacious, also by Sarah Lyons Fleming. This is the first book in her second trilogy, the City series, and it takes place in the same world as the Until the End of the World series, but it's just different characters. This is also really good. I've read the first 2. I don't own the second one, and I still need to read the third book. Next is Semiosis by Sue Burke, and then I have the All Souls series by Deborah Harkness. I love these books. The first is the prequel, Times Convert, and then the trilogy, A Discovery of Witches, Book 1, Book 2, Shadow of Night, and Book 3, The Book of Life. Next is the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, another favorite trilogy of mine. The first book is The Fifth Season, Book 2, The Obelisk Gate, and Book 3, The Stone Sky. The Passage by Justin Cronin, Book 1 in the Passage trilogy. I love this book. And then Book 2, The 12. The Queue by Basma Abdelaziz. And then next is the Road to Nowhere trilogy by Meg Elison, another great trilogy on the shelf. The first book is The Book of the Unnamed Midwife, Book 2, The Book of Edda, and Book 3, The Book of Flora. Then I have 2 books by Nalo Hopkinson. The first is Brown Girl in the Ring and Midnight Robber. Then I have a lot of mass market paperback books. The first is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, 2001 A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke, and Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey, Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie, 1984 by George Orwell, and then the last mass market paperback book on this shelf is Lord of the Flies by William Golding, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson, An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon, Foucault's Pendulum by Umberto Eco, A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr., and then the final book on this first shelf is The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. And the 2 books I have displayed on this shelf are A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine, Book 1 in the Taxicalon series, and the one that sits in this corner is The Deep by River Solomon with David Diggs, William Hudson, and Jonathan Snipes. And then the shelf item that I have here is this quote from The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. It came in my Wiccan Fable order. It says, "If I cannot be better than them, I will become so much worse." And then the other side says, "Instead of being afraid, I could become something to fear." And that's it. Moving on down to shelf number 2. Alright, so let's start with bookish items on this shelf. The first is this Wiccan Fable candle that my best friend got me for my birthday last year. This is the Holiday at Hogwarts scent. It smells so good. I burned the one that she gave me and then had to repurchase it because this scent is amazing. So if you're looking for a Wiccan Fable scent, definitely go with this one. And then the other one is Karamzin, and I don't know what fandom this is from or if it's from a fandom at all, but this one's kind of sweet, so I burn it like every now and then. And then the only other non-bookish item on this shelf is this Funko Pop of Rey, and that's about it. And then as far as the books that I have displayed on the shelf, the first is Exhalation by Ted Chiang, and then the second is the graphic novel adaptation of Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, and it was adapted into a graphic novel by Damian Duffy and John Jennings. Okay, so the first book on this shelf is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and I know I said I was skeptical about reading Andy Weir again, but this sounds really good, so I'm just hoping that I get along with this book. So next is Tomorrow's Kin by Nancy Kress, and this is book 1 in the Yesterday's Kin trilogy. Altered Carbon by Richard K. Morgan, A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, and this is book 2 in the Wayfarer series. Then next I have the first 4 books in the Expanse series by James S. A. Corey, book 1, Leviathan Wakes, book 2, Caliban's War, book 3, Abaddon's Gate, and book 4, Cibola Burn. Otherland, volume 1, City of Golden Shadow by Tad Williams, The Wind-Up Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi, The Light Brigade by Cameron Hurley, Binti, the Complete Trilogy by Nnedi Okorafor, and this includes Binti, novella number 2, Binti Home, and novella 3, Binti the Night Masquerade. Velocity Weapon by Megan O'Keefe, book 1 in the Protectorate trilogy. Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor, Planetfall by Emma Newman, book 1 in the Planetfall series, book 2 After Atlas, book 3 Before Mars, and book 4 Atlas Alone. Rosewater by Tade Thompson, book 1 in the Wormwood trilogy. And then next is my Octavia E. Butler collection. The first book I have is Parable of the Sower, book 1 in the Earthsea duology, and book 2 Parable of the Talents. Fledgling, Lilith's Brood, which contains the novels Dawn, Adulthood, Rights, and Imago, and Kindred. The Reapers Are Angels by Alden Bell. And then the last books on this shelf are all novellas. The Undefeated by Una McCormack, Binti by Nnedi Okorafor, The Haunting of Tramcar 015 by P. J. Clark, The Test by Sylvain Nouvelle, Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor, To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers, and the final book on this shelf is Bloodchild and Other Stories by Octavia E. Butler. Okay, so now we're on shelf number 3, and the first book on this shelf is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, Nevernight by Jay Kristoff, the first 3 books in the Trader Baru Cormorant series by Seth Dickinson, book 1, The Trader Baru Cormorant, book 2, The Monster Baru Cormorant, and book 3, The Tyrant Baru Cormorant. Lexicon by Max Berry, The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, Jade City by Fonda Lee, and book 2, Jade War. The City in the Middle of the Night by Charlie Jane Anders, Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko, and this is translated by Julia Maitov Hersey. Devolution by Max Brooks. House of Earth and Blood, book 1 in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. And then next is the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang, book 1, The Poppy War, book 2, The Dragon Republic, and book 3, The Burning God. Docile by K.M. Sparrow. A Desolation Called Peace, book 2 in the Taxacolon series by Arkady Martin. Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, book 1 in, I'm not sure what the series is called, but this is book 1. The Last Wish by Andrei Sapkowski, which chronicles Geralt's adventures before the actual Witcher novels begin. And then as far as the 2 books that I have displayed on this third shelf, I have Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse and Do You Dream of Terror 2 by Temi O. And the only non-bookish item that I have displayed on this third shelf is Sadness from Inside Out. Okay, now we're on shelf number 4. The first book on this 4th shelf is To Hold Up the Sky by Sixon Liu, and this is a collection of Liu's short stories. The City Where We Once Lived by Eric Barnes, The Tradition by Jericho Brown. Then next is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and book 2, The Wise Man's Fear. The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, book 1 in the David Bond trilogy. A Hero Born by Jin Yong. The Complete Persepolis by Marjan Satrapi. The Moonlight Child by Karen McQuestion. Nimona by Noel Stevenson. The Atlas 6 by Olivier Blake. The Scorch Atlas by Blake Butler. The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. I love this book so much. It's so good. And I love the movie. Embassy Town by China Mieville. The Games House by Claire North. We Are Satellites by Sarah Pinsker. Contact by Carl Sagan. The Water Knife by Paolo Bacigalupi. The Changeling by Victor Laval. Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. House of Names by Colm Tóibín. Renegades by Marissa Meyer. When Gravity Fails by George Alec Effinger. City of Thieves by David Benioff. Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long. The Passengers by John Mars. The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty, book 2 in the David Bond trilogy. Metro 2033 by Dmitry Glukovsky, book 1 in the Metro series. So next I have the Sprawl trilogy by William Gibson, and the first is Neuromancer, the second book is Count Zero, and the third book is Mona Lisa Overdrive. And then as far as the books that I have displayed on this 4th shelf, the first is Ring Shout by P. J. Lee Clark, and then the final book on this shelf is Unconquerable Sun by Kate Elliott. Moving on down to our second to last shelf. So the first book on this shelf is Lovely War by Julie Berry, The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys, The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell, All Our Yesterdays by Kristen Terrell, Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, Elysium by Jennifer Marie Brissett, Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys, Fable by Adrienne Young, Blood Air by Amelie Wen Zhao, The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He, Pump 6 and Other Stories by Paolo Bacigalupi, The Crystal World by J. J.G. Ballard. Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker. The Girl in the Road by Monica Byrne. Two Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer, book 1 in the Terra Ignota series. Midnight at the Electric by Jodi Lynn Anderson. And then I have the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins, book 1 The Hunger Games, book 2 Catching Fire, and book 3 Mockingjay. The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. Good Morning Midnight by Lily Brooks Dalton. Serafina by Rachel Hartman. We All Looked Up by Tommy Wallach. I really enjoyed this. I think this is a little underrated, but this was such a good read. Slade House by David Mitchell. Proxima by Stephen Baxter. The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, which was her inaugural poem. And then the final books on this shelf are the ones I have displayed. The first is Legendborn by Tracy Dion and the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, which contains Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and the third and final book, Ruin and Rising. And then as far as the other shelf items, down here I have this jar. I forgot where I got it from, but I have this jar and it's holding all of my bookmarks, and then I even have a lot of like magnetic bookmarks down here in the bottom, and I use these all the time. Okay guys, and then down here on this final shelf, it's a little hard to, I'm holding the camera so it's kind of hard to pull them out now one by one, but this is what the final shelf looks like. Arcadia by Ian Pierce. This is House of Leaves, Year One, The Quick, The Wolf Road. This one's pretty cool. This is Bats of the Republic. I haven't read this yet, but I was really intrigued by the format when I saw this in the bookstore. This is by Zachary Thomas Dotson, and it's just like kind of cool. I'll get to this eventually. A lot of maps and cool pictures in here. Yeah, so that's interesting. Then I have the Dahlia Black, Down Below Station. I can't wait to read this. Then I have Uprooted by Naomi Novik, Spinning Silver. I really want to read this. How Rory Thorne Destroyed the Multiverse. Some more sci-fi down here. This is a short story collection, Ancient, Palimpsest, Map of Time, Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. And then like all the way up in there, I have some books too. I have The Giver by Lois Lowry. I don't remember where this one came from, but I have this. Then I have The Book Thief as well. The Tiger and the Wolf, Tell the Wolves I'm Home, Game Changer, Rail Sea by China Mieville, and then the last book on the shelf is Radiance by Catherine M. Valente. And that, you guys, is shelf number 1. Okay, so now let's get started on bookcase number 2. So the only bookish item on this shelf is this Go Away, I'm Reading sign. And I forgot where I got this from, but it just sits at the top of my bookshelf. So, and then the other item that I have sitting on this shelf is this candle extinguisher that my coworker got me for Christmas last year, maybe 2 years ago. But I actually use this, and it's kind of cool. I feel very fancy when I put flames out with this. Okay, so getting started with the books on this shelf, the first book that I have here is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, book 1 in the Red Rising saga, book 2 Golden Sun, book 3 Morning Star, book 4 Iron Gold, and book 5 Dark Age. Next is The Raven Tower by Anne Leckie, The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood, Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis, The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons, The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, book 1 in the Burning Saga, and book 2 The Fires of Vengeance, Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett, The Empire's Ghost by Isabel Steiger, The Empire of Gold, book 3 in the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. And then next is Persephone Station by Stina Leicht, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, Providence by Max Berry, The Hidden Girl and Other Stories by Ken Liu, The Book of M by Peng Shepard. And then the 2 books that I have displayed on this shelf are Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon and Red Rising by Pierce Brown. So moving on down to shelf number 2. Okay, so on the second shelf, let's start with my SF Masterworks collection. The first book that I have here is The Doomed City by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke, Time Out of Joint by Philip K. Dick, The City and the Stars by Arthur C. Clarke, Blood Music by Greg Bear, Raising the Stones by Sherry S. Tepper, Dahlgren by Samuel R. Delaney, Ammonite by Nicola Griffith, Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, Babel 17 by Samuel R. Delaney. This is an incredible novel. Highly recommend this one. And the final one in this stack is The Stars, My Destination by Alfred Bester. So now let's start with the hardcovers that are on this shelf. The first one is The World of All Souls by Deborah Harkness, and this is a complete guide to her All Souls trilogy, A Discovery of Witches, Shadow of Night, and The Book of Life. I highly recommend this if you're a big fan of those books like I am. This is like a coffee table read almost, but it's so much fun. I love flipping through this every now and then. Next is Cold Welcome by Elizabeth Moon, and this is the first book in the Vata's Peace duology. Then next is the Themis Files trilogy by Sylvain Neuvel. I love this trilogy. I need to finish book 3, but the first 2 are so good. The first book is Sleeping Giants, book 2 Waking Gods, and book 3 Only Human. Next is New York 2140 by Kim Stanley Robinson, Ancestral Night by Elizabeth Bear, Skyward, book 1 in the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson, and book 2 Starsight. And the last hardcover on this shelf is Sky Hunter by Marie Lu. And then on the other side of the shelf, I have my final stack of SF Masterworks. This is Monday Starts on Saturday by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, Hyperion by Dan Simmons, Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Then I have a couple of Philip K. Dick novels. The first is Ubik, The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, Doomsday Book by Connie Willis, The Fall of the Towers by Samuel R. Delaney, The Book of the New Sun, Volume 1, Shadow and Claw by Jean Wolfe. And then the last couple of books on this shelf are Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers, and this is book 3 in the Wayfarer series. And the final book on this shelf is Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang, my favorite book of all time. And then as far as the books that are displayed on this shelf, I have A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Neuvel. This was really good, actually. And then over here is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. And then I have a tea that I got from Michael's, maybe. And then over here is a little elephant that my sorority sister got me when we were in college when she went to Sri Lanka. Okay, so now we're on shelf number 3, and the first book on this shelf is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. And then next I have some books in the Grishaverse by Leigh Bardugo. The first is The Six of Crows duology, book 1, Six of Crows, book 2, Crooked Kingdom, book 1 in the King of Scars duology, King of Scars, and book 2, Rule of Wolves. Next is the Complete Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas, the prequel Assassin's Blade, book 1, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and the final book, Kingdom of Ash. Next is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and then An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir, book 1 in this trilogy. And then next I have a trilogy that I don't think I've ever mentioned on my channel before, but I really loved this when I read it several years ago. This is the Legend trilogy by Marie Lu. Book 1, Legend, Book 2, Prodigy, and Book 3, Champion. Then I have the Bone Season trilogy by Samantha Shannon, Book 1, The Bone Season, 2, The Mime Order, and Book 3, The Song Rising. Then we have the Maze Runner trilogy by James Dashner, Book 1, The Maze Runner, Book 2, The Scorched Trials, and Book 3, The Death Cure. Next is Angel Fall by Susan E. And then the last book on this shelf is City of Savages by Lee Kelly. And then the only book that I have displayed on this shelf is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. Okay, so now we're on shelf number 4, and the first book on this shelf is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu, The Book of Coley by M.R. Carey, The Stars Are Legion by Cameron Hurley, Space Opera by Catherine M. Valente, Nexus by Ramez Nam, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, The Lost Puzzler by I.O. Kless, Alas Babylon by Pat Frank, Gene Mapper by Teo Fuji, Foundation by Isaac Asimov, The Gilda Stories by Jewel Gomez, Blackout by Connie Willis, A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess, Born by Jeff Vandermeer, China Mountain Zhang by Maureen F. McHugh, A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe by Alex White, The Mansion by Ezekiel Boone, Company Town by Madeline Ashby, This Alien Shore by C.S. Friedman, The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin, Frankenstein, The 1818 Text by Mary Shelley, Japanese Ghost Stories by Lafcadio Hearn, Nomen by Nick Harkaway. And then next I have some of Neil Stephenson's novels. The first is Reamdy, Snow Crash, Quicksilver, and Anathem. Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff, Minority Report by Philip K. Dick. This is a collection of stories. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is book 1 in the Wayfarer series. I think we've seen all of the other books in the series except for this one, so this is book 1 finally. Pandora's Star by Peter F. Hamilton, and then Old Man's War by John Scalzi. And then the 2 books I have displayed on this shelf are A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers, A Monk and Robot book, and Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. And then I have an M that sits on this shelf, and my boss actually got that for me for Christmas a couple years ago. Alright, so the first book on this 5th shelf is A River Called Time by Cortia Newland, Futureland, 9 Stories of an Imminent World by Walter Mosley, The Demon King by Cinda Williams Chima, 13 Doorways, Wolves Behind Them All by Laura Ruby, The Black Prism by Brent Weeks, The Tiger's Daughter by Kay Arsenal Rivera. Then I have the first book in the Gemma Doyle trilogy by Libba Bray. The first book is A Great and Terrible Beauty, book 2, Rebel Angels, and book 3, The Sweet Far Thing. Next is Knots and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. Then I have the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, book 1, The Final Empire, book 2, The Well of Ascension, and book 3, The Hero of Ages. The Thief by Megan Wayland Turner, Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon Ha Lee. This was an arc that was sent to me by the publisher. And then finally, on the other side of the shelf, I have The Immortals by Jordana Max Brodsky, Zoo City by Lauren Bukes, and then I have the Lord of the Rings series by J.R.R. Tolkien, starting with The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and then finally The Return of the King. And then to wrap this shelf up, I have Bone Shaker by Sherry Priest, From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett, Written in Red by Anne Bishop, and the book that I have displayed on this shelf is The Electric Kingdom by David Arnold. And then the shelf item that I have on this shelf, I have a pumpkin sitting inside of a mug, and I got this mug from Strand Bookstore in New York. This side says, "Leave me alone, my favorite fictional character just died," and then this side just says Strand on it. And even though it sits on my shelf, I do drink out of that pretty often. All right, so now I'm taking my camera off the little tripod and we can go down to this last shelf, kind of like how I did with the last bookcase. I'm just gonna quickly go through the books down here. This is just PlayStation. I'm a big gamer, so this is just a PlayStation Lite that I got. And then the book that I have displayed here is The Walking Dead Compendium by Robert Kirkman, Charlie Adler, Tony Moore, and Cliff Rathburn. And this includes, this is volume 1, and so it includes, I think, yeah, it says issues 1 through 48 of The Walking Dead. So there's that. I'm still making my way through this. I haven't picked it up in a while, but I still really enjoy just, you know, occasionally cracking this open. So I am going to finish this one day. And then down here, just some larger paperbacks and some hardcovers. I have The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This massive book, I don't even remember where I got this from or if someone got this for me. This is huge. This has been on my shelf forever. I have Connect, that, what is this, Last Song Before Night, Firekeeper's Daughter. That is The City of Lost Fortunes. I remember being really excited for this book when I got it. I haven't read it yet. So, oh my god, now I can't put it back. And then I have The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is the ultimate collection that includes all of the novels in that series. 84K by Claire North. Then I have a couple of newer books down here. Starless by Jacqueline Carey, Master of Poisons. I have some older steampunk books down here. I actually really love these two books, Retribution Falls and The Black Lawn Captain. And then these two were sent to me by publishers, Beneath the Rising and Made to Order. This is a collection of short stories. And then up in here I have another steampunk novel, The Affinity Bridge. And then this After the End and Until the Beginning. I think these are the only two books in the series. I don't know if it's a duology or a full trilogy. But this is a young adult, I think post-apocalyptic series. And then I have all 4 Twilight books. And that is the bottom shelf in a nutshell. And the end of bookcase number 2. So now let's move on to this final case right here. Okay guys, so we are officially on the third and final bookcase. The first book that's on this top shelf is Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson, Luna, Moon Rising by Ian McDonald, The City and the City by China Mieville, Waste Tide by Chen Quifan, translated by Ken Liu, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, The Last Namsara by Kristen Ciccarelli, My Soul to Keep by Tanana Reeve Dew, Revenger by Alastair Reynolds. And then I have the first 2 books in the Sixth World series by Rebecca Roanhorse. These books are so good, I love them. The first is Trail of Lightning, and book 2 is Storm of Locusts. Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessel. Then I have the first 2 books in the Darker Shade of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. The first book, A Darker Shade of Magic, and book 2, A Gathering of Shadows. Next is Autonomous by Annalee Newitz, What Big Teeth by Rose Sabo. And then I have the first book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, The Gunslinger. The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, book 1 in the Dandelion Dynasty series. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, book 1 in the Southern Reach trilogy. I love this book so much. Next is Famous Men Who Never Lived by Kay Chess, The Vor by B. Catling, Vicious by V.E. Schwab, Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie, The Book of Strange New Things by Michelle Faber, Blood Red Road, book 1 in the Dustland series by Moira Young, The Amateurs by Liz Harmer, The Lights of Prague by Nicole Jarvis. I cannot wait to read this book. This is on my TBR for the second half of the year. I'm so excited to read this. The 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. The Clockwork Dynasty by Daniel H. Wilson. Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson, book 1 in the Mars trilogy. And then 2 mass market paperbacks by H.G. Wells. The first is The Time Machine, and then The War of the Worlds. And then finally, to wrap this shelf up, the book that I have displayed is Dune by Frank Herbert. And then I have a couple of shelf items up here. I have this map of indie bookstores in the Midwest. I forgot where I got this from, but this is from the 2019 edition, and this is really helpful for like Independent Bookstore Day in April, and just really handy to have if you like open it all the way up. This is probably gonna be hard to show on camera, but if you open it up all the way, it like lists the different states. I'm probably not doing a good job of showing this. Michigan up there, down here Illinois where I am, all the Chicago indie bookstores, and this is just a really fun tool to have if you want to check out some new bookstores in the Midwest. I do want to get this framed one day because it's massive, and I would just love to like hang it on the wall right next to my bookshelf, but for now it's just a little pamphlet. And that is the end of shelf number 1. Down to shelf 2. All right, so let's kick things off on the second shelf. The very first book here is A Crown for Cold Silver by Alex Marshall. Next is A Gathering of Ravens by Scott Oden. Luna New Moon, which is book 2 in the Luna series by Ian McDonald, which I'm just now realizing should probably be on the first shelf with the first book. I didn't even realize that they were separated like that. Next is The Tangled Lands by Paolo Bacigalupi and Tobias S. Buckle. The Feed by Nick Clark Window. Here and Now and Then by Mike Chen. Next is River of Gods by Ian McDonald. The Final Six by Alexandra Monier. The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. Six Wakes by Mur Lafferty. BioShock Rapture by John Shirley, and this is a prequel to the BioShock video games. This is an amazing book. Even if you're not a fan of the games, this is just an amazing book. Go read this. Then I have 2 novels in the Culture series by Ian M. Banks. The first is Consider Flavis and Matter. The Doors of Eden by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Amatka by Karen Tidbeck. The Book of Joan by Lydia Yuknovich. The Sunlight Pilgrims by Jenny Fagan. Liquid Crystal Nightingale by Eileen Lee. Infomocracy by Malka Older. The View from the Seventh Layer by Kevin Brockmeyer. A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Piranesi by Susanna Clark. Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. The Light Years by R.W.W. Green. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Skyward End by Aaliyah Whiteley, and this is an arc that was sent to me by the publisher. Feed by Mira Grant. Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury, and The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. I have a lot of Bradbury kind of sprinkled around here, so just bear with me because I think there's some on the shelf below the next one. And then the 2 books that I have displayed on this shelf are Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel and The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson, which was really good. And then the shelf items that I have here, this is a Ninth House candle that I got from an Etsy shop, and this smells so good. It has like a woodsy kind of smoky scent, if you can see what's in it. Yeah, black pepper, wood, and amber. So I mean, it smells exactly like that. It smells so good. So if you like those kind of earthy, smoky tones, this smells amazing. Highly recommend. And then the final shelf item is Vault Boy from Fallout, which is my favorite video game franchise. All right, let's move on down. All right, so now we're on shelf number 3, and this is my last like dedicated YA shelf for the most part. This is like all YA fantasy and dystopian on the shelf. So the first book is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. Then the Caraval trilogy by Stephanie Garber. Book 1, Caraval. Book 2, Legendary. And Book 3, Finale. Next is Kingdom of Souls by Rena Barron. So now we're entering the His Dark Materials world. The first book that I have here is The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman, Volume 1, La Belle Sauvage, The Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife, and Book 3, The Amber Spyglass. And these are the 10th anniversary deluxe editions. Next I have Dry by Neil Shusterman and Jarrett Shusterman, Rebel by Marie Lu, which is a novel in the Legend universe, Wilder Girls by Rory Power, Dread Nation by Justina Ireland, A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown, The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. Then I have the Arc of a Scythe trilogy by Neil Shusterman. I love these books. The first book is Scythe, Book 2, Thunderhead, and Book 3, The Toll. Sky in the Deep by Adrian Young, The Never Tilting World by Ren Chupeko. And then to wrap up this third shelf, I have the Darkest Minds trilogy by Alexandra Bracken. I actually really enjoyed these books. I didn't read the third one, but I really love the first two. The first is The Darkest Minds, book 2, Never Fade, and book 3, In the Afterlight. And the books that I have displayed on this shelf are Furyborn, book 1 in the Imperium trilogy by Claire Legrand, and Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. And then the last shelf item that I have here is the Piper Funko Pop from Fallout 4, which is again one of my favorite video games. All right, so let's head down to shelf number 4. All right, guys, so now we're on shelf number 4, and the first book on this shelf is Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. And then I have the first 5 books in the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. I have been finding these books so cheap at my local used bookstores and could not pass them up. So the first book is Blood of Elves, The Time of Contempt, book 3, Baptism of Fire, book 4, The Tower of Swallows, and book 5, The Lady of the Lake. Next is Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri, book 1 in the Books of Amba duology, The Court of Broken Knives by Anna Smith Spark, book 1 in the Empires of Dust series, The Last by Hannah Jameson, Everything's Eventual by Stephen King, which is a collection of 14 of his short stories, and honestly some of my favorite works of his. Blindness by Jose Saramago. And then I have the first 2 books in the Alice duology by Christina Henry, which is a really dark and twisted take on Alice in Wonderland. I typically don't like retellings, and I'm really just picky about the ones that I read, but this one was really good and just extremely dark, and I really enjoyed this. So this is book 1, and then the next is Red Queen, and I haven't read this one yet, but I will get to it eventually, but Alice is so good. Next is Shadow of the Short Days by Alexander Dan Vilhelmsen. Next is Lost Gods by Micah Yongo, book 1 in a fantasy duology that I think is really underrated. This book was really good. I haven't read book 2, but definitely put Lost Gods on your TBR. The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams, The Human Son by Adrian J. Walker, The Three-Body Problem by Sixin Liu, translated by Ken Liu, Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell, The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, The End of the World Running Club by Adrian J. Walker, The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey, and then one of my personal favorite YA dystopian trilogies, the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness, book 1, The Knife of Never Letting Go, book 2, The Ask and the Answer, and book 3, Monsters of Men, Big Fish by Daniel Wallace. And the 2 books that I have displayed on this shelf are Tagana by Guy Gabriel Kay and A Master of Gin by P. Jelly Clark. And then the shelf item that I have here is a candle from Wiccan Fable in the scent Sci-Fi. This smells absolutely amazing. Please do yourselves a favor and go, please do yourselves a favor and go get this one. This is my 3rd time buying this scent. I don't know what I'll do if they stop selling this scent. This smells incredible. All right, let's move on down to the second to last shelf here. Cooper, would you like to get down maybe? No, just straightening out the book for us. I appreciate that. Okay, let's get down. Come on. No, okay, don't stretch in there. Now you're just getting comfortable. Okay, so now we're on shelf number 5, and this is like my designated thriller shelf for the most part. There are like a few sci-fi and fantasy novels, but it's like all thriller novels pretty much, and mystery. So the first book on this shelf is The Whisper Man by Alex North, and then I have 2 novels by Stephen King up here. The first is The Institute, and then The Outsider. The Survivors by Jane Harper, The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce, and then I have 3 Riley Sager novels. The first is Home Before Dark, Survive the Night, and then the last one is Lock Every Door, Recursion by Blake Crouch. Then I have 2 novels by Simone St. James. The first is The Broken Girls, and I know this is a book of the month pick, but I personally didn't pick this from book of the month. I think I got this from my used bookstore. And then the next is The Sundown Motel. Next is Kill the Father by Sandrone Daziri, The Chestnut Man by Soren Weistrup, Long Bright River by Liz Moore, The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter, and then The French Girl by Lexi Elliott, The Silence of Bones by June Her, Wanderers by Chuck Wendig, The Soul Majestic by Ferret Steinmetz, Walk Away by Cory Doctorow, Loosed Upon the World, the saga anthology of climate fiction, and this contains stories from authors like Margaret Atwood, Paolo Bacigalupi, Shannon McGuire, Kim Stanley Robinson, Robert Silverberg, and others. And this was edited by John Joseph Adams. And then I have 2 novels by Tana French down here. The first is In the Woods and The Likeness. Next is one of my all-time favorites and my yearly fall recommendation book, and that is Night Film by Marisha Pessel. This is so good. Swan Song by Robert McCammon. And then the last 2 books on the shelf are the ones that I have displayed. The first is The Push by Ashley O'Drain, This was really good. I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed that. And then the second book that I have displayed on the other side of the shelf is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. And then for the shelf items, I have this smooth coconut candle that I got from Kirkland's. This smells so good, and I burned it so frequently. I got to the bottom of it, and now I'm too scared to burn it because I don't want to run out of it. This is such a great scent. So that's the first item, and then I just keep it in this little candle holder, and I've had this candle holder for years. I got this from Bath and Body Works years and years ago when I had a Bath and Body Works gift card. All right, and so now we're gonna do what we did for the last two shelves. I'm gonna take my camera off of this tripod, and we're gonna just kind of zoom over this final shelf down here. So I have two books just kind of hidden up in here because there's no room. They're both Stephen King novels, The Shining. See if I can focus that. Yep, The Shining. And then I have The Stand hiding up in here too, this monster of a book. And then the books that are displayed down here is The Unseen World by Liz Moore. This is such a good book. I want to reread this actually one day. This was good. And then the other book that I have displayed over here is The Crow Girl by Eric Axel's son. And one of the first books on this shelf is These Violent Delights, not to be confused with the YA novel. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is down here. This is my collection of Ray Bradbury's short stories. This is 100 of his most celebrated tales. This is a really great poetry collection by Jamal May, which is Hum. And then just some scattered sci-fi down here, some dystopian, more Bradbury. The October Country, which is fantastic. One of my favorite short story collections, especially during the fall season. Got Fahrenheit 451 down here. The Talented Mr. Ripley. More Bradbury right here. This is The Illustrated Man. This is one that I've been meaning to get to for a while now and just have not picked it up yet. This is Gun with Occasional Music by John Leatham. I'll get to that eventually. And then Night Watch by Sergei Lukianenko. This is actually on my 2021 TBR. And I will get to that this year. Howl's Moving Castle is here. And then up in here, we have a book that was sent to me by the publisher, Northern Wrath. I have the second book in the Stormlight Archive series, Words of Radiance. And then I have the first three books in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. And these four books right here, I got all of these from the Book Depository. So these are the UK covers. And then, these two. I got these from the Book Depository. The Lies of Locke Lamora, Red Seas Under Red Skies. Those are the UK covers too. And then down here, the final book on the shelf is Labyrinth Lost. And that's what the shelf looks like. I'm going to put everything back. Slide Stephen King back up under there. And that is it for bookcase number 3 and all of the bookcases. Actually, we're done. So that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching my very first bookshelf tour. Like I mentioned earlier, this was such a fun video to film, and like I also mentioned, it might be a while before I do it again. So again, thank you, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.